So as part of our MuleSoft with databases integration, we started last week. We looked at what databases are, the different databases that the relational databases particularly, why we need databases, their advantages, when compared to spreadsheets, what are the advantages that we get from using databases. At a high level, we saw that. And today, since databases, we say to communicate, to interact with databases, to query data from databases, we use a language called SQL. So we will spend time today looking at the basics of SQL. And tomorrow, we will write SQL code in MuleSoft itself and integrate MuleSoft with MySQL to get data from MySQL. And then after that, we will also see how to insert data from MuleSoft to different databases. So first, to just give you perspective without going into details, let me show you what we have for tomorrow. So here, for example, as you can see, I have a couple of flows. And by the way, for this, for today's class, since you can practice by running the SQL code in the W3C website. The data I'm using is from the W3C website. I just imported the tables there to my SQL. So let me go back here to the top. Okay, so if you just click this, it will take you to here. Then you can remove this code and write your own and run it. Like, for example, if I want to bring the first one, I can just copy it like this from here and paste it here and click run SQL, and then I will get the output here. And also for this class, just for to understand it better, I have also exported the data as CSV, as comma separated values. So these are the different tables that we have in the W3C database. So if you go to W3C, you see here on the top right, under your database, these are the tables they have, and you see the number of records. Number of records means number of rows. Like, for example, the customers, it says it has 91 number of records, 91 records. And if I open customers here, this is the customers data, and as you can see, it has 91 rows. This part, let me remove it. So in here, in the flows, I will share these flows. I will push them to GitHub, and then you can get them from there. We are going to see in detail what we are doing for tomorrow. But I just want to show you here so that you get perspective that knowing SQL, having knowledge about databases is important part of MuleSoft. This is not outside of the scope of our classes. And if you see the connectors here, even on the right, you see we have database here, and under database there is insert. Mainly we are going to focus on insert, select, and a couple of them, not even in detail, not all of these operations. But as you can see, knowing SQL is important part of MuleSoft is what I'm trying to say. So here, the first flow, in this first flow, it just gets data from the database, from all employee data. And the second one, it gets data for a given ID, a given employee ID. So, like, let me get the path and show you a sample. So I'm using array parameter here, as you can see, get data, there is employee ID as a array parameter. The one below it is using query parameter, and the one below, the bottom one, is using a header. We will see this tomorrow in detail, but let me just show you using the URI parameter. For example, if I just take this here and make sure this is running, okay. So while this is running, so if I go to Postman and in here, get data, Like for example, this one, it should give me data for the employee with employee ID 1, because that is how it is structured in here, because we have employee ID as a URI parameter. As you can see, URI parameter, we put it using curly braces, and here I am creating a variable of the URI parameter, and that URI parameter I am passing it to the SQL query, including it to the SQL query, so that it gives me the data for that particular employee ID. So this one, the code, we will see it in detail. I just want to show you so that you have a big picture. So here now, if I go here, let me make sure this is deployed. Yeah, this one is deployed. Let me clear the console. And now if I send this one, it should give me data for the employee with employee ID 1. And I know the employee data is here. It has 10 rows, and now it should give me the first record here. This one is with the employee ID 1. So in Postman, I should get the data for this one. So if I do send, as you can see, here is the data. It is in JSON format, but this is the data for the employee with employee ID 1. As you can see, there is employee ID and it says 1. So tomorrow we will understand this in detail, but today we are just going to see how we are going to see SQL. How do we write SQL to interact with databases? Okay. So first is terminologies. There are a couple of terminologies that it is good to know them. The first one is query. Query means just the SQL code. If I say send me your query, it means share your SQL code with me. And also SQL, you may hear people pronouncing it in different ways. Some people pronounce it as SQL, others SQL, and so on. I think either of them are, the most common ones are either SQL or SQL. And the other terminology is about front-end interface, or user interface. So this is these are tools where you enter your queries to interact with the databases. So the database is like it is called the back end. It sits on the back. You don't see it. What you see is the user interface or the front end. That is what you see. You enter your code there, then you run it, and that code is sent. The user interface sends the code to the database, and the database executes it and sends back the result to you. And there are different front-end tools. One of them is Workbench. So here, for example, I have some SQL code. This SQL code, when I click execute, this code is going to be sent to the database, and the database runs it and returns the data, the result, and the result gets populated here in the front end. So there are different front ends. Workbench is one, pgadmin is another one, lots of them, Jupyter Notebook, and so on. The front ends companies use can vary from company to company, but the most common ones are like Workbench. There is also one, this one is a data grip. So generally, they are not difficult. Like any user interface, you can just get used to it in a couple of hours. There is not much learning curve with any kind of user interface. But when we say user interface anyway, they are tools where we insert our queries. Okay, perfect. Now let's see about the query anatomy. There are basically in SQL, there are 6 keywords that you have to know. If you understand these 6 keywords, how to use them, what they are doing, then you will be good with interacting with databases, with integrating MuleSoft with databases. So the first one is the verb select. So select, we use it to select the data we want, particularly specific columns. Then next is from. So select, in select, we write which columns we want. For example, I may say first name, last name, and the age, and so on. And then from is the source. I specify the tables and the databases. So we will practice this in the examples. Select and from are mandatory. And there is another one, where. This is used for filtering data. Like, for example, you may want to filter data where the income is greater than 150,000, or where the temperature is greater than 70 degrees, something like that. We use where for filtering data. So we specify some criteria. Based on the criteria, the rows get filtered. So it is where is used for filtering rows at the record level. And there is group by. So this one, we use it for aggregating data. For example, if you have daily temperature for multiple years, and if you want to get the average temperature for each month, the average daily temperature for each month, what we do is first we group it by months. So each month will be in separate groups. Now, since we have the data for each month, we just get average of it. So that way we aggregate the data and it gives us average. We use it to calculate average, maximum of a group, minimum of a group, median of a group, or count. It could also be count. In each group, how many records do I have, and so on. We'll see example of this one also. Another one is having. So having is used once we aggregate the data. For example, you may want to include, you may ask, which months have an average daily temperature greater than 60, for example, or which months have daily average temperature less than 30, and so on. So having is used to filter the aggregated data, not from the data, not the raw level original data, but what you calculated. First you calculate, it calculates using the group by, it gets result, then you further filter that based on this having property. And there is the last one for sorting, order by. This order by, you can order it in ascending order, which is a default, or in descending order. It can be alphabetically or numerically. And if it is descending, we use DESC. We will see an example. By default, it is ascending. That means it starts from the lowest and it goes to the highest. And if we do descending, then it will be the reverse. So as we said here, only select and from are mandatory. If you have select and from and you specify column names that you want, then your query will run, will give you back results. And also it is a good practice to end your query by using semicolons that you see here, because if you have multiple queries that are separate from each other, and if you don't include a line, an ending semicolon like this, then it will give you an error message, and it is good practice to include it. And another thing is this keywords are not case sensitive. That means you can use lowercase or uppercase. It understands both of them. The tables, the database, and the columns, you have to spell them exactly as they are in the database. But these keywords, you can use lowercase or uppercase. So it is not case sensitive. And the other thing is, it is a good practice to put each of these keywords in a separate line, because it becomes very easy to read. But you can also just put them in one line. That also works fine. Like this, for example. Select the data I want from these databases and tables, from this database and tables where these criteria are met, and group by this field, having this property, then order by this field or list. This is SQL query. So it could take you a little bit to grasp all the details, but once you know this, then you are good in, you can write decent SQL query. So after that, on this page, before we go to examples, here I have operators that we use in the where clause. So we said we use where to filter data. For example, the first one, as you can see, is equal sign. So where country equals to USA. So it will filter only rows that where the country is USA. Or we have the second row greater than, and we can say where age is greater than 25, or less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. The other one is above between. As you can see, above between we have less than, greater than. That means not equal to. You can also put it as exclamation equals to. Exclamation equals to, or less than, greater than together, it means not equal to. If I do select user first name, last name from employees table where age not equals to 20, then it is going to give me all records where the age is not 20. We can also use between where age is between 5 and 10, or where date is between 2021 and 2022, and so on. Like is used for search for a pattern. We'll say an example. I think this one is easier to understand with an example. The other one is in. We use it to specify multiple possible values for a column. For example, you may want data only for the months of January, March, and May. So you do where months in, then you specify the months. So in is used to specify multiple possible values for a column. So for our MuleSoft with database integration, I think this is for getting data. So we have inserting data to database from MuleSoft, and we have reading data from database using MuleSoft. We are now looking at the code that we can use to read data from databases. And this is more or less enough. If you understand all this and go over the examples, I think you will be good to interact with databases in MuleSoft. And I have the examples. I will explain the examples one by one. And if you have any questions also, I will take. But before that, I have also a couple of operators here. So OR is used to combine two Boolean expressions, and it returns true when either of them is true. This is what we know from set theory in math. And for end to return true, both of them have to be true. And not is negation. So if it was true, if you add not to it, it will be false. If it was false, if you add not to it, it will be true. So it reverses it. Another important data type is null. So null means no data. And if the value of any expression is null, when you do any operation with it, the resulting output will be null too. Like if you have null plus some number, null times some number, or when you concatenate something with null, all these things will give null. So this is also important to know, because sometimes you may get an error message, or you may get data that you didn't expect. And if you keep this in mind, that can help you in debugging it. So now let's go to the examples. So I have the examples here. Let me increase. So for your case, as I said, this one I have shared it in the email that I sent today. Just click this link. It will take you to W3C. The data is here in the W3C website. So if you put your code here, it should run. But for my case, to show you the results by executing them one by one, I want to explain it one by one and show you the output. So I have imported the data to my SQL. So as you can see, I have this W3 schools, and the tables, I have imported them here. And if anyone wants to import them to their MySQL, also let me know. Probably later when we start looking at inserting data to databases from MuleSoft, we may do that, or we can work with other databases. But if you want to import it to MySQL and practice with it, also let me know. So the first one here is select star from employees. So there is employees table, as you can see on the right here. I have employees table. So if I do select star from employees, it gives me every record from employees. So the employees data is this one. Let me remove the color here. So when I do that, it will give me the whole of this. It is not a good practice to use this code usually, especially when you have large databases, because in most databases you can have billions of records, and this may take a couple of hours and then crash. This is common. It happens. Many of us have made this mistake. But remember, if the table is big, it is not a good practice to use select star. But anyway, star in this case represents all columns. And the other thing to remember here is, as you can see here, I'm not specifying the database. On the top here, I have specified the database by using use W3 schools. So here I have told it which database I'm talking about, because you can have the same table in different databases. In my case, for example, I have these databases. I have W3 schools, Northwind, MuleSoft, and so on and so on. As you can see, W3 schools is bold because I'm using that. But if I change to use Northwind, for example, let me show you here. Use. Now, if I run this will be Northwind will be bold. And if employees is not there in the Northwind database, then this will give me another message.
يا بحيث أجري تعود أوزي تجيو.
Sorry guys, I have to meet you. Then I'll take questions later. Oh. Okay, so what did we say here? Here we are talking about specifying the database. A given database, I mean multiple databases can have the same table name. So we have to first tell it which database we are talking about. So I can do, if I run this now, as you can see, Northwind is bold. That means it is going to look for tables in that database. But anyway, my examples are with W3C, so I have to run this. Now this is active. Or the other option you have is you can put database.table. So if I drag this and bring it here and put W3 schools.employees, now it knows which database I'm talking about. So it is going to check in that one, even if I don't use this even if I don't explicitly first tell it to use the W3 schools database here. So either way should be fine. But rather than again and again doing the database name dot table name, it is good, I think, especially for practice purposes, since you will have multiple code chunks. It is good to first tell it which database you are talking about, and then just run then you just specify your table only. Okay. Another note here is we say these keywords select and from are not case sensitive, which means you can write it as lowercase or uppercase. It knows it. However, the database name and table name, it is a good practice to put it as exactly it is in the database. If it is uppercase, put it in uppercase. If it is in lowercase, put it in lowercase, and so on. So now this one, if I just select it and click execute here, I get the output here. As you can see. This is the in-place data. If you don't have MySQL yet, if you don't have Workbench, just from the file that I shared, which is from here, you can select this, take it to here, paste it here, and run it. So it shows you the output here. So that is the first one. Next is, rather than just getting all the columns, you may be interested. In most cases, you don't need all the columns. So you may be interested only a couple of columns. Like our employee data has employee ID column, last name, first name, birth date, photo. Maybe this photo, the files reside somewhere, and this is just a file name. And there are some notes here that you see. Let's say, for example, we are interested only in these columns. Let's say we want to return only these columns. So what we do is select, then last name, first name, birth date from employees. That is what we did here. As you can see, select first name, comma, last name, comma, birth date from employees. And you see all of our code chunks, when we are putting an ending semicolon. And the other thing is the column names, we separate them by a comma. And the other thing is at the end, we don't put a comma. So now this one, if I execute it now, it gives me, as you can see, first name, last name, and birth date. If you just use select star, it can give you the column order. It can be in any random order. If you want it to be specific order, you have to put the columns you want explicitly like this. Even if you want all the columns, if you want the columns to be in specific order, then you have to explicitly put them. Another one is getting the count of the number of records, and we use count asterisk for that. Select count asterisk. This means it gives a count or the number of rows in this order details table. And this part, it is called aliasing, or I am just renaming it. Let me run it and show you. If I do like this, if I just do select count star from order details, as you can see, the column name will be just count star. So for further accessing it and doing some further analysis, it is not as handy. So rather than doing that, we can rename it. Aliasing means renaming. The columns, you can rename them. Whether they are new output or even the existing columns, you can rename them. This one, first name, for example, if I just want it to be name, I can do as name. It should work fine. So this is, we use as to rename the column outputs, and we call it aliasing. So that is what we have done here. By the way, I have a Kahoot later, and the Kahoot questions will be about what I am talking at a high level. So please pay attention. Another one is about getting unique values or distinct values. Unique and distinct are the same English words. They have the same meaning. So, but the function we have in SQL is not unique, but distinct. So here, if I want the unique countries in the customer table, I can just write select distinct country from customers. So if I just do the differences like this, if we go to customer, let me remove distinct and show it. If I do select country from customers, it is going to give me all the records of the country column. So there will be duplicates. If there are 10 people from Mexico, Mexico will be repeated 10 times. If there are 5 people from Canada, the same thing. Canada will be repeated 5 times and so on. But usually there are many cases where you want to get the distinct values, distinct of anything. And we use distinct for that. So if I run this, as you can see, I have Germany, Mexico. Let me order it. You say Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, France, and so on. But if I just add distinct, now the countries will not be repeated. If I do like this, as you can see, it shows at the bottom, customers 21. So these are unique countries. So this is the customers table. I can show you by opening the customers table. This is the customers table in Excel. And if you go to the country column, so when you do select country from customers, it just means give me this column. So it will give you the whole of it from here up to here. But if you do select distinct country, it is going to, for example, first is Germany, then Mexico. This row, it will skip it because it has got Mexico already. UK is new. Sweden is new also. Germany, it will skip it because there is Germany here. France is new. Spain is new. France, it will skip it. Canada is new. UK, it will skip it because we have UK here, and so on. So that's what it is doing when we do distinct. And next is, rather than getting distinct of countries or distinct of a column, you may be interested to get the count of the distinct. So you simply wrap distinct country in the function count. So when I do count distinct country, and I'm renaming it as number of countries here, it will give me a number because it is counting. First it gets the distinct of the countries, then it gives me the number of rows basically. So this one, if I run it, as you can see, it gives me 21. I can show in Excel also if we have 21 countries. This country column, I can select it here, go to insert, insert, go to here, pivot table, and specify the location of the output where I want it to be. Then country, take to here, and in here, value field is count. Okay, what do we have here? We have some count, average. They don't have count distinct. So what we can do for that is take this to here, and yeah, if I do like this and remove the grand total and blank, remove this one also, remove, and show this in tabular format. If I do this here, and I can create row number here, number, and 1, 2, now just drag this should be 21. So as you see, there are 21 distinct countries, and this one, column L, is giving us the number of entries or the number of rows for each country. So Argentina, there is Argentina 3 times, Australia 2 times, Brazil 9 times, and so on. We can come and check it here. This one. So this one, what we can do is okay, I think we will do it later when we get to group by, but if I remove this distinct and run this and just click here so that it is sorted alphabetically, you see Argentina we have 3 times, and that is what this one is telling us. Argentina is 3, Australia is 2. We can see Brazil, we have 9, France 11, Germany 11, USA 13. Let's check for USA, for example. If I scroll down here, USA, I have from here up to here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah. So anyway, so we use select distinct to get a list of distinct values of a column, and if we wrap it in count, the distinct, if we add count to it, it gives us the number of distinct values in that column. Perfect. Next one, number 6 is, so now we have started using where for filtering data. We said we use where in here. So where is used to filter data based on some criteria, and this is, I think, this is very commonly used in APIs, because you have some API, someone is interacting with it, you want to give them back data that is relevant to them based on their ID, based on what they specified. Like for example, if I asked for temperature data for a specific location, then it has to use the where filter to filter the data and get the data for that location only. Or if in a social media I clicked someone's profile to give me data about that user, it has to go to the database and filter the data based using where and the user ID equals to the clicked user ID. So this is important part for our case too when we use with MuleSoft, because I will give it a user ID and it will give me back the data for that user ID, and I can pass the user ID as a query parameter, URI parameter, or a header, but I will use where for filtering it. So that is an important thing. So see here, select star, I want to get every record from the customers table, every record for where the country is, Germany is what this is doing. Select star, get all columns from the customers table, but I want the country to be Germany only. So the customers table is this one. Let me remove this. The customers table is this one, the original customers table. So what we are saying is, I don't want the whole file. I just want only for Germany, which means if I go to country here, the distinct country values are here, and select them all, and just select Germany. So it should return 11 records, as you can see. There are 11 records, and now if I come here and run this, you can see here The output are here. So this should be 11. 1, customer ID 1, 6, 17, and so on. And that is what we see here. 1, 6, 17, and so on. So some of the analysis you do, if you are used to Excel, you can do it in Excel and get the output and compare your output in SQL also. It helps to comparing, if you know a couple of tools, comparing the output, doing it in one tool, in the tool that you understand well, and asking yourself, how do I do it in the other tool, and comparing the outputs helps you to master it well. So as you can see here, we are using where country equals to Germany. So we said in DataWeave and in other programming languages, using single equality is assigning. If I say x equals to 5, then I am assigning x to 5. So next I write x, then its value will be 5. Whereas in SQL, we don't do assignment like this. So we don't use double equals to. Single equals to is for checking if country is Germany. In DataWeave, to check if the country is Germany, we use double equals to like this. For example, if you remember when we use choice router, in the choice router, for each when, which returns true or false, and the first route where the when returns true, it gets executed, we use double equals to. But here we use, remember, in SQL we use single equals sign. And the other thing is, this one, since it is a string, we say this keyword is the SQL keyword is select from where are not case sensitive, which means you can use lowercase or lower uppercase. But these values, you have to put them exactly like they are in the database. Like this one, German, if I put it lowercase, for example, it will not work because it should be exactly like what it is there. Okay, the other one here is still we are in data filtering using where is using in to get records where the category name is either beverages or produce. You can have multiple values here, but what this means is it is going to return only rows where the category name is specified here. Okay, you can specify as many values. So this one, so it is from the categories table. I have the categories data here. So what we are saying is, I open it. This data is very small. So if I do, let me create a column with this. So we are saying here, filter category, we said we want only produce. Let's select them all, beverages and produce. This is basically what it is going to return. Because I said category name, I want it to be beverages and produce. So if I come here, if I run this, it gives me, as you see, beverages and produce. So in here, this one, category name in beverages or produce, it returns, what it is doing is each row, if it is checking if the category name is any of this, and then it will give true or false, and it will return the rows where it is true. And we said if we use not, it is negation. So if I add not here, then it is going to give me all rows, but where the category name is not beverages or produce. So now, if I run this, now as you can see, I don't see beverages or produce. So remember, not means just negating the logical, the output from the criteria here we have. If you put not, you are reversing it. If it was true, it will be false. If it was false, it will be true, and so on. Now, here is about between. So from order details table, we are saying we want the rows. As you can see, we are still at raw data. It is returning the raw data. It is just filtering it, but it is giving us the raw data. It is not aggregating it, or it is not doing any calculation. We will see aggregating the output also. So here, I want the quantity to be between 5 and 10. So between is inclusive. So 5 and 10 will be included. And if I go to the order details table, which is this one, scroll up. So order, or we said what was criteria? Quantity. Okay, the quantity column. So what I'm saying here is the quantity column. I'm saying I just want records where the quantity column is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it should return this one. And I can run this. Let's run it. The other one, by the way, let me show you this one. You see this one, I have an ending semicolon. If I remove this, then in the next part, it shows me an error message because since this part has not ended appropriately, it is considering this one and this one as one code chunk. So remember to add an ending semicolon. Okay. So we said we can use between, but you can use also end. If I say where quantity greater than or equal to 5 and quantity less than or equal to 10, it is the same as between. It is as between 5 and 10, 5 and 10 inclusive. So you can use and also. And means both of these, the Boolean expression should return true. So greater than 5, all the numbers greater than 5, this one will be true. And this one will be true for all the numbers less than or equals to 10. This one for greater than or equal to 5, it will be true. This one, it will be true for all numbers less than or equal to 10. And numbers between 5 and 10 will be true in both of them. So it returns only the numbers between 5 and 10 for that case. Another example, you can use EndFilter data where between is not applicable. For example, country is Germany and city is Berlin. So one, it will give me, this is just a dummy example because I think Berlin is only in Germany. But if you have a city, in the US, for example, the same city name can be in multiple states. So you have to specify the state name and the city name. If you just say city, some city name, if that city happens to exist in multiple states, then you will get records for all states. So, but anyway, you use end to filter data in such cases. We also have or in or we use it gives us data where, like in this one, for example, when I say where city is Berlin or city is this one, it will return for both of them. If either of them are true, then the records will be included in the output when we use or. So that's the difference between and or. If it is and, both of them should be true. If it is or, if either of them are true, then you get the result. Okay. This one, using not, we already saw it. You can do, what I'm doing here is give me data for all countries except Germany. So I just added not here. This one is for Germany. If I added not, then it will be exclude Germany. Or I can also do this one. I have the next one. Not, we can put it negation. We can put it in multiple ways. We can use not, as you can see here, or in here I have added it here. As you can see, we have not country equals to Germany, or we can remove this not and this equals to sign. We can make it a negation using exclamation equal sign, which means not equal to, or we can also put less than greater than. This one and this one means the same thing, and this one also you reverse the output from here. The true will be false, the false will be true, and so on. So you can put all these three queries, they mean the same thing. So before we go to our Kahoot questions, I have a last code. Let's explain this in detail. Spend some time here. So it is about aggregating data. So this one, data aggregation. So what we are doing here is, let me remove this. So let's say this is from the order details table. Let me show you in Excel. I have this order details table. And let me increase the spacing to 15, and the font also you can, so that you can see it clearly. Let me increase that to 18. So I may ask you, for example, if this is order ID is here a given order, so someone can come and they can order 12 items. So you see quantity here, and or product ID is some product, we know it. There is another table that maps product ID to product name. So this, the first one, for example, this order ID is 10,248. They ordered the product with product ID 11, and the quantity is 12. Second one, quantity is 10, and so on and so on. You see, this is our quantity. So now for example, you may be interested to get which product is ordered the most in terms of total quantity and also in terms of frequency, even if it could be in small quantities, but which product is ordered the most. And you can also say which product is getting, in which product is one order ID containing the highest quantity, like in one quantity, for example, what is the maximum quantity per product ID in this week. And you may want to compare it even from week to week to see its changes. Is it getting more customers, or are we losing customers, and so on. So this one, first we want to group it by product ID. So to group it by product ID, let me first sort this by product ID. And just if I go here and click A to Z means sorting in ascending order, whereas Z to A means starting from top and falling down. So let's do like this. So you see product ID 1 has been repeated a couple of times, 2 a couple of times, and so on. Let me just select some records from 1 to 5, for example, or from 1 to 6, and show you what we are doing when we aggregate data. So do like this. The column width is 15. Now, when we aggregate data, when we group it, what we are doing is we group the rows that have product ID 1 together. So this is one group. The ones that have product ID 2 together. This is another group. The ones that have product ID 3 is done together. We just have 2 records here, as you can see. And 4 is together. And okay, 4, let me change this. For another group. And 5, another group. And 6, another group. So now, once you aggregate, once you group it by this product ID, now you may get, if the question is total quantity per product, you just add this. So for product ID 1, for example, it is the sum, this sum, as you can see, which is, in Excel it shows in the bottom right. If I do like this, it shows me the sum is 159. If I just do like this, 159, if you see it here. And the average also, it shows me 19.9. So what this is saying is, if this is in a week, for example, 159 items of product ID were sold, and per order, they ordered around 20 items, is what this is saying. So some orders have higher, the highest is 45, and the lowest is 10, and so on. So we can get the average, the sum, the minimum, the maximum, and so on. So this SQL code just does that. So as you can see, we start with select as usual, and then we specify the grouping column. We group them using product ID. The product ID in each group is distinct, is just one value. So we have select product ID, and here we have group by. In the group by also we specify these columns that we are using for grouping, which is product ID. Here I am adding order by product ID so that it is just a product ID column. It is the result is sorted starting from 1 to 3 and so on in ascending order. Otherwise, this one is not really mandatory part of this. So once I do this, once I add the group by product ID, as you can see, I can add some quantity. I'm calling it total. So that will be the sum column. Average quantity, I'm calling it mean. It will calculate the mean value. Count, it will give the number of rows in each category. Mean quantity will give the minimum in each category, minimum value. Max will be maximum, maximum value in each category. So if I run this, we can compare it with what we get in Excel. If I run this and show you here, product ID one thing is the order by, as you can see, it is just in ascending order. That's the reason that I have here, so that we can compare with output in Excel. So product ID 1, the total quantity is 159, the mean is 19.87, number of records is 8, minimum is 10, maximum is 45. Let's check that if we have that in Excel. Here, if I just select these values, as you can see, sum is 159, the same as what we got from MySQL. The average is 19.875, the same thing, and the number of records is 8. And the minimum and the maximum also, we can see it from here. Minimum is this value, and the maximum is this value. You can calculate the median and so on, other things also. Basically, when you use group by, you group the data by some one or more columns, and then it returns, usually it returns one record. So for this whole group, you have one row as output. For this another group, you have another one row per group. One row per group is what we are getting here. So this is group by. Group by, we use it for data aggregation, where we use it for filtering data, and the order by is for ordering. So if you practice this, as I said, especially if you are new to SQL, please go over this doc that I have shared and run it in this links that I have added here. Each one of them, run them and make sure I understand them. The data also, you can I can send you the data. I can share the data also in the you can open it in Excel and compare the data you get in Excel versus from your SQL query. Now we have only 5 minutes. First, let me give you the Kahoot questions, and then at the end I will take questions if we have 1 or 2. Okay. Yeah, only the first 2 are required. Like see this one, for example. Here we have only select and from. So if I run this, it works. But if you want further to filter it or to aggregate it and so on, you can add the other keywords. But for just getting data, without these 2, it will not work. For it will not run, but it can run without where in the group by is what I mean when I say only the first 2 are mandatory. The others, it depends on based on what you are doing, but always the first 2 are there if you are getting data from a database. And if you are inserting data to a database, it is a different thing. We will see that next week. So tomorrow, go over this SQL code. Please practice until our class tomorrow, and we are going to see how we can get data from the database from the database using the database connector when we give it a user ID or a name as a header or as a query parameter or as a URI parameter. So now let's go to our Kahoot. Kahoot is here. So the reason in the previous classes, couple of classes, we didn't have Kahoot was the questions were too long because it was scopes with flow reference and HTTP request, and it involved exhibit plotters. So that is the reason that today I have short questions, which I couldn't in Kahoot, sorry. So go here. Start. Okay, perfect. I'll start. All the questions are from what we saw today. Please join the Kahoot. So here we have 50 people, so from 50 at least 30 people I think can join. Just search Kahoot. If you are new, just search Kahoot in any browser, whether in your phone or in your computer, kahoot.it. Then it will ask you for a game pin. Insert this game pin and some username, and then just click join. It should be very easy to join. Okay, I can get started. I think only half of you have joined. Because once I click start, you will not see the game ping, I guess. Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Binyam. Yeah, Kahoot.it. Let me see what other questions are there here. Do you guys have any WhatsApp or Telegram group? Yes, we have Telegram group. And can someone share with this user the Telegram, how they can join our Telegram group?
I think it's shared there.
Okay, perfect. Let's get started. So which of the following is different is the first question. Workbench, front-end interface, user interface. Just from the slides we saw today. One is different. As you can see, there are different multiple balls, and one of them is different in the plot. Okay, yes, Workbench is a user interface, an example of a user interface, but user interface or front-end interface, or front-end means a tool that you interact with. You insert your code and it interacts with a backend database or other kind of software and gets the result from that database and displays it in the front end. So front-end interface, user interface are the same. Workbench, PG admin, and so on are other examples of user interface. Okay, perfect. Next question. Which SQL keyword is used for data aggregation? So as you see, first you aggregate, you create aggregators, create chunks of data, and then you do calculation for each group. So which one do you use? Do you use group by, where, select, having? I guess this one is just intuitive. We use group by to group the data by a grouping column, and then for each group by we do some calculation. So yes, we use group by to aggregate data. Next one is, which of the following SQL keywords are mandatory to have in a query? Select, having, group by, where. Yes, if you want to get all the data, for example, it is just select star from table name. So select and from are mandatory. If you want to further filter the rows, you use where, but that is not always the case. If you want to aggregate it, you add group by, that is not always the case. And further, if you want to filter the outputs that have some criteria in the group by, you add having, and so on. So select and from are the mandatory ones, yes. Perfect. Last one. Which SQL keyword do you use to filter rows or records? Like, for example, if you want records for Germany only, or for USA only, or night hours only, and so on, from the raw data itself before you aggregate it. Yep, for filtering data, we use where. We use where, then we specify some criteria, and it has to fulfill your criteria. It returns only the rows that fulfill your criteria. So that's it. Okay, let's see the winners. Nice. Followed by this, and followed by Carl. Thank you so much, guys.